Every dungeon master has had a game ruined because all their players want different things. Well, today we're going to have a look at actual game theory and psychology behind those player types, specifically the four main player types. So hopefully it will help you understand your players better, hack your prep, and have a much better game. Let's get to it. So picture this. You've just spent the last 2 weeks prepping this amazing session, ready for your players to just gobble up everything you give to them. You introduce your new NPC, Lord Aldous, famed, noble, and ready to adventure. But before you can do too much more, are you coming to join us? Lord Aldous, please be a member of our party. Wait a minute. If they're chatting, is he distracted? I want to know if I can get anything in before anything happens. Do I get a surprise round? Oh, do I have a chance to put bless on everyone around me and make sure he can't see it? And yeah, I'm just gonna pick his pockets. That's an 18. Wait a minute, DM. Lord Aldous, isn't that the guy, the archivist, the second archivist of Branderheim? Does that mean that he knows the Knights of the Round? As the DM, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed. You might feel worn out. You might feel confused and like you can't please everyone because at the end of the day, you've got four different player types at the table, and none of them are even from the planet Earth, apparently. But here's the secret: none of these players are doing anything inherently wrong. Some of them might be, but generally speaking, they're not trying to break your game. They're not trying to beat you, and they're not trying to make you hate the game. What they're doing is unconsciously trying to satisfy and validate these feedback loops they're getting and trying to just get what they deem to be the most fun, enjoyable, and interactive experience they can because everyone's brains work a little bit differently. So, why don't we go ahead and get into it and the psychology behind these four player types? So, let's kick it off with this man, Richard Bartle. He wrote a paper that kind of innovated the way into looking behind motivations for players in games. He called them MUDs, multi user dungeons. The paper in question, called Hearts, Clubs, Diamonds, Spades, Players Who Suit MUDs. It was published in 1996, and the basic premise of it is that there's four different directions in which players will interact or act with the world. Now, if we have a look at this diagram right here, basically what it's showing is that there's acting, interacting, there's the world, and there's players. Now, we'll have four different branches here. We have the socializers, the killers, the achievers, and the explorers. And what that means is, as you move across the graph, you get different play styles. If you're interacting with the players, for example, you'd be more of a socializer. You're more interested in finding out what ticks for the other players at the table. But if you're acting on the world, you're more likely an achiever, always trying to figure out ways around the game, trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with the game, basically how to win the game, but without it being a meritocratic, I have to win this above everyone else, but more of a, I need to feel accomplished to have had fun. Now, it's a pretty long paper, and what I don't want to do is sit here and just talk you through the entire paper and not break down the things that actually are applicable to the game for you as a dungeon master or a player. So what I'll do is I'll chuck the link down in the description to the paper with the citation. Feel free to go ahead and give it a peruse at your earliest convenience if you so desire. But getting back to it, what are the four types of players that we're going to be talking about? Well, let's call them archetypes. The first one being the Optimiser, power gamer. You might know them as a min-maxer. This is the drive for mastery. The second one being the Murderhobo, although people don't like that term as much anymore, so maybe let's call it the Instigator. This is the drive for agency, the driver to feel like you're pushing things. Then you've got the Roleplayer or the Actor. Now, this is the drive for connection and immersion. And then the fourth archetype, the final one, last but not least, is the Cartographer or the Lore Hound or the Lore Enthusiast, whatever you really want to call it. But this is the drive for discovery and exploration. Now, before I go any further, if you don't already, please do subscribe, chuck me a like, give me a comment of what you want to see. I really appreciate it. It doesn't take long and it's free, and that's the best way to support me as I make this content for you. But back to it. Let's have a look at archetype 1, the Optimiser, power gamer, min-maxer, that drive for mastery. So the behavior of this player is someone who knows most of the rules, they build mathematically perfect characters, they might try and use every single piece of their character sheet to solve problems rather than thinking creatively. outside of the character sheet. So rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to try and do this thing to backflip over this thing to then slide onto this thing to then use this thing I found to do this thing, they might actually instead go, well, actually, I have this spell which is going to give me this much movement, which I can then pair with my action to dash or something along those lines. Now, the thing in game psychology with this, and if you want to read more about it, there's a paper right here. This kind of maps closely to the achiever. This is the human brain craving a sense of competence and mastery in a complex environment. This could stem from not getting that in the real world. Maybe they don't feel challenged enough. Maybe they're intellectually above their job or their hobbies. But in the game, it's kind of just that way of the math isn't there to ruin the game. It's how they see themselves progressing the story. It's how they interact with the world safely and effectively. My biggest tip, if you have a power gamer at your table, my DM tip, if you will, is firstly have a conversation with them. See if this is their motivation, because their motivation might just be that they like feeling cool that they've got stuff on their character sheet to do, or it might be that they feel like they're lacking imagination. But if it is for the reasons I've described, then maybe what you want to do is give them distinct mechanical complex puzzles that they can use every ounce of their character sheet to solve in the game. So maybe it's a complex puzzle door that requires certain spells and elements from their character sheet. And this gives them a way to kind of outlet some of that desire and some of that drive without it impacting other players' experiences in other sections of the game as well. Now, archetype 2, the Murderhobo, or the Instigator, basically the drive for agency. The behavior here is that they push every red button, they start fights in taverns, they might solve problems with unilateral action. They might not think about much, they might not plan with the party, and basically they're just doing anything that offers them an immediate gratification. Now, the observations here in game psychology is that this follows kind of like the killer archetype. This is to do with the fact that psychologically their drives and their needs and their desires are dependent on more active measures rather than passive measures. Rather than sitting and listening to the story and taking in other people's role play, they might much more prefer to just push something over or press a button or hit something. And this comes from something called uses and gratification theory. And I'll chuck a little link to it up here. This is what we're talking about. And basically, it just states what I've just said, that they require some sort of active, interactive way to involve themselves in the game to get their motivations and their drives. This could stem from someone who feels micromanaged in sections of their life. Maybe they're a 9 to 5 office worker and every job they ever have to do is laid out on a to do list for them. And the thing with TTRPGs and video games is they offer an immediate, unfiltered way to get instant gratification. You do something, something happens. You choose to do something, something else happens. Now, my DM tip for this one is to not just punish them with overbearing guards or immense security measures. Instead, maybe implement random buttons in your game that serve a fascinating narrative consequence. Something that's not going to break your game, isn't going to impact other players, but gives them a sense of, oh, I pressed it, something happened. You could do the same thing with NPCs. Maybe chuck a random encounter in where the NPC just needs a good beating. I don't know. But that's the Murderhobo archetype, or the drive for agency. Okay, archetype 3. This is the one I think a lot of people relate to off the bat. This is the deep role player or the actor archetype, that drive for connection and immersion. So the behaviors here would be things like caring deeply about your character, maybe making flawed choices because it fits the narrative and what they would do better. Maybe there's long dramatic monologues or conversations with other characters at the table. The observation here in game psychology is that you would sit in that section of socializers, using the game's fiction to kind of explore emotional states and interpersonal dynamics. The reward isn't winning the combat or winning the game, it's the shared emotional experience with the table, with the DM, with the characters in the game. Now, one psychological theory that helps explain this is self determination theory, or SDT. It basically explains that as a person, we often try to seek out and find ways that we can adopt identities or ways of being that keep us safe and still allow us to explore. So, for example, you might be a very quiet and anxious person. Now, to walk out into a group of people and start being loud and confident might be really scary. But to play a loud barbarian at a table that gives you a safe distance from your own ego to explore things, well, that might just be a better way of connecting. And some people that fall into this would be people with quite high empathy. And we live in a world where at times there can be really low empathy. So again, it gives you a way to almost escape. So if the murder hobo is trying to escape a life of being micromanaged and not having any agency, the deep role player or the actor would be trying to find a way to adopt a new life where it's safe to express emotions and to be different people and to figure out who you are. Now, this might not match everybody. There's plenty of other different theories behind the actor or the deep role player. This is just the example I'm giving. So, for a DM tip, I would say you want to kind of give them stakes that can't be solved with spells or actions. They're things that are like moral dilemmas, like the trolley problem, or give them scenarios where they have to decide on whether or not they shift alliances or whether they remain true to their original agreements, like loyalty. Give them things that the normal person would be discovering through life. Things that, like a teenager, having to discover if they're going to be the guy who bunks off school and has fun with friends, or the guy who sits quietly in a corner, reads books, and doesn't socialize much. Give them a way to kind of just explore who they are. But again, there are many different philosophies or reasons behind why someone might adopt the deep role player or that drive for connection and immersion. This is just one. So don't take it as gospel, but it's just an example. Also, here's a paper that might help you understand self determination theory a little bit more if you would like to. Right, last but not least, let's move on to archetype 4, the cartographer, or the lorehound, or the lore enthusiast, or the lore keeper, whatever you would like to call them is fine. But basically, the drive for discovery and exploration. The behaviors here are going to be asking about your kingdom's economics, trying to figure out the secrets of your world, asking for handouts, wanting to explore the edge of the map, and kind of just trying to uncover every stone and not leave anything untouched. The observation here is that the explorer, the brain kind of finds deep reward in uncovering hidden patterns and mapping out the unknown, basically trying to figure out these things that are pretty hard to figure out. When the challenge of a game kind of matches a player's analytical curiosity, they enter a kind of flow state. Explorers find these sort of cognitive ways around puzzles, and they find a lot of almost validation from being able to figure things out and feeling like they actually understand intrinsically the world in which you've presented them. Now, my DM tip here is to very simply plant secrets in your world, plant hidden political connections, make them meet the BBEG early and see if they figure it out. A lot of the time, these law keepers are also your note takers. They're people that want to inherently remember everything in your world. So give them small details that other people might not notice, because then when they come to the party and say, "Hey guys, I figured this thing out. I know who the big bad is." The party's going to go, "Holy hell, you figured all that out? Oh my God." And then they're going to feel like they're a really functional part of the team. It's just a way to really feed their attention to detail and give them something that feels exciting, entertaining. Now, like I've said, not all of these are a catch all for all players. And the last thing I'd want you to do is go to your players and say, "You do this because of this." Because without actually evaluating someone, we don't actually know if that is their motivation or their drive. But these are just some generic concepts that kind of help you to understand your players a bit more. The overall idea being that instead of having all of your players subscribe to a specific campaign model, we can add little aspects into our campaigns and our games that allow these different play types to explore the things that they find most entertaining in games, give them all a sense of fulfillment, and make them want to come back for more every time. It doesn't work for everyone, it won't work for everyone. And like I've said, pessimistically, there's going to be the occasional player that's doing it maliciously or is just a little bit selfish or egotistical. But generally speaking, I would love to believe and do believe that the majority of players are just driven by what they enjoy. And if we can understand that and we can offer problems and puzzles and situations that allow them the chance to explore that, then why wouldn't we? I mean, If you're anything like me, my favorite thing as a dungeon master is seeing the players smile, gasp, or look shocked at something I've presented to them, because they can really connect with it. And if they can really connect with it, then I can really connect with them. And if we can all connect with each other, then hopefully you have a long-term campaign group that you can continue to play with. Now, if anything in this video has come across as extremely interesting to you or something you'd want to know more about, drop it in the comments for me, chuck me a like. Please do subscribe to the channel, it's the best way to support me, and I will get to them as soon as I can. And if any of these topics seem to require a little bit more depth in covering them, I shall do that to the best of my ability. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I have really loved making it. It's my first ever long form YouTube video. So please do let me know how I've done. Let me know ways I can improve, and let me know if there's anything that you would like to see in the next one. Thank you all. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, weekend, whatever it is for you. See you later.